Nature works in mysterious ways, and sometimes those ways can be dangerous. A lot of strange things happen when you're out in the woods or out on the water. Sometimes we don't know what happens out in nature. We just know that some people go out and never come back. My name is Brienne, and I'm the host and creator of Among the Dirt and Trees, a show where we explore true crime cases that occur out in nature. In today's episode, we're going to address a request from a few weeks ago on the Michigan Triangle, a confusing piece of nature that has claimed a lot of lives in a way that no one can quite explain. Fans of conspiracy theories are going to love this one. The Michigan Triangle, or Lake Michigan Triangle, is a name given to an expanse of water on Lake Michigan. Covering several key areas, this part of the lake has seen its fair share of mysteries. Some people believe that it is simply bad weather and deep water. Others believe that there might be more at work here, like a terrifying natural occurrence, or, worse, aliens. Now, you all know how I feel about aliens, but despite my fear of being abducted and taken off to the human zoo, I'm still going to risk upsetting the aliens by airing out this long list of grievances against them. As you can imagine, the Michigan Triangle kind of stole its name. Based on its similarities to the Bermuda Triangle, this freaky part of lake has accounted for quite a few mysteries throughout history. The oldest events go back as far as the 1800s, but that might just be the only stories carried forward. The truth is that we don't know how long this triangle has been stalking humanity. So, let's discuss some of these odd occurrences. In 1870, a ship that would go on to be called the Thomas Hume was made and sold. In 1891, this boat was being used to transport lumber, but something strange happened out on the water. There was a sudden storm, and the ship traveling alongside the Thomas Hume immediately turned around to avoid it. The Thomas Hume carried on, and it would never be seen again in its lifetime. Now, this was not a small ship. And while Lake Michigan, which drops down to 955 feet in its deepest parts, is significant, they still expected to find something. But when they went out to look for the ship and its crew, there was nothing to find, not even a scrap of fabric floating on the water or any of the lumber. Obviously, people are very concerned about this ship just disappearing, but others think there might be some sort of scheme involved. One theory suggests that the captain went on to a different port, repainted the boat, and then made off with the cargo. But in 2006, we used modern technology to dive down deep, and it's believed that the ship has been found, though it has never been completely confirmed. Strangely enough, the ship didn't have any damage. It looks completely intact, and as far as I can tell, there were no signs of the bodies of the crew. To this day, no one knows what took down the ship. A ship sinking below the waves of a giant lake isn't the most unusual turn of events, but not every mysterious event from the Michigan Triangle is that normal. The disappearance of Captain George R. Donner is one disappearance that I'm sure had people running absolutely wild with rumors. According to the historical record, in 1937, a crew was out on the waters of Lake Michigan. They entered the area known as the Michigan Triangle, and it was at this point that everything seemed to be going fine. They were set to reach port soon, so the captain decided to retire to his cabin for a little bit of rest. A few hours later, the ship approached the port, and one member of the crew went to go talk to the captain to let him know that they were arriving. Strangely enough, the captain didn't respond. The crew tried to get his attention more, but he wasn't replying. It was at this point they realized that the door was locked. Fearing that something had happened to him, they busted down the door. Inside, the cabin was completely empty. Everything was just as it was, but the captain was nowhere to be found. No one knows where he went, or even how he could have gone anywhere at all. How could the captain lock the door from inside and then slip past the crew? And where would he have gone out in the middle of this giant lake? Some speculate that aliens swooped in and beamed him out. Others think that he may have planned his own escape. As for me, I have to wonder if this was some kind of mutiny situation and the crew killed him, then just claimed that he disappeared. We may never know. There are some mysteries that we can't quite explain from the Michigan Triangle. Instances where common methods of transportation suddenly turn into little more than watery graves at the bottom of the lake. The Rosabelle was one of these unfortunate vessels. The year was 1921 when it set out across the lake. When it didn't return, people went out to look for it. What they found was quite a surprise. The Rosabelle was overturned, and that's not all. The ship was horribly damaged. It seemed clear that the ship had been struck by another vessel, but it didn't make sense. There was no other vessel, and no ships were reported as having been involved in an accident. Perhaps the Rosabelle ran into one of the mysterious ghost ships that had sank before it. But to this day, it remains a mystery. If you read through stories like this, you think, I would simply not go out on a boat in this triangle. And while that's probably not a bad idea, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're safe. With the Bermuda Triangle, ships are not the only things that go missing, and that is the case with the Michigan Triangle as well. In 1950, a Northwest Airlines flight was traveling over the Michigan Triangle. They had to suddenly descend early because of a severe electrical storm. As they started to descend, they disappeared from radar. No one knew where the plane was or where it went. It's commonly accepted that the plane crashed into Lake Michigan, but it isn't all that simple. The plane's wreckage was never found. We can't even confirm that it did go down over Lake Michigan. All we know is that it disappeared without a trace. While a standard crash is an obvious conclusion to draw, some theories about this disappearance are a little more concerning. There is a kind of cult following of people who believe that the plane and its crew were the victims of an alien abduction. Later reports from the local authorities would address a strange sight over the lake, a mysterious red glow taking over the sky for about 10 minutes. To some, this is an obvious indication that the plane was snatched up and taken away by aliens. And this is not the only story that makes people think there might be some alien activity out on Lake Michigan. In 1978, Stephen Kubacki, a 23-year-old outdoors lover, decided to do a cross-country skiing trip. He was crossing Lake Michigan, which sounds terrifying but is apparently quite normal. But this was not a normal situation. Stephen disappeared. A short while later, some other adventurers found some of his gear and his bag. They alerted the authorities immediately, hoping to help them find a missing person. When police arrived, they learned who that gear belonged to, and they followed his trail of footsteps. Stephen's footprints clearly led to the edge of the lake, and then they just came to a dead stop, like he stopped walking at all. Over a year later, Stephen was found, but finding him was even more confusing than his disappearance. 15 months passed between his disappearance and when he was found, and Stephen cannot account for those missing months. He said that he remembered feeling cold and scared. Then the next thing that he knew, he was waking up in a field in Massachusetts, over 700 miles away from where he disappeared. He had new gear, a new backpack, and all kinds of evidence that he had traveled all around the United States, but no memory of it. Startled, he managed to find his way back to his family. To this day, no one knows what happened, but it sure looks like someone or something picked Stephen up and then possibly kept him for a while. He has no history of mental illness. The Michigan Triangle copied its name and, according to some experts, might have copied something else too: Stonehenge. At the bottom of Lake Michigan, there is a structure that is nearly identical to Stonehenge. The art on the structure implies it was likely made over 10,000 years ago, but this is a little tricky. No one knows if it's real. And if it is, it could actually be older than Stonehenge, which is pretty crazy. Some people believe that it is real, and they even think that it might be responsible for the mysterious activity around the lake. Is this underwater Stonehenge some kind of alien portal? Personally, I hope not. So, if you want to discuss mysterious disappearances, creepy places in nature where the laws of physics don't work right, or how to survive in the event of an alien apocalypse, feel free to contact me on Twitter or Instagram using the tag @DatPod. Thanks, guys.